I knocked on her door to borrow sugar. I left wanting her instead. That line played in my head long after the first time I saw her, standing there in the warm glow of her doorway, half smiling like she already knew I wasn't here for sugar. She looked like a scene that had been paused halfway through something beautiful. Bare feet, loose cream sweater slipping off one shoulder, hair gathered in that lazy way that makes it seem unplanned but perfect. Her eyes, the kind that carried both calm and storm, studied me longer than politeness allowed. "Sugar?" she asked, her voice low, amused. I nodded, though I couldn't remember why I'd really come. The words stumbled out, something about running out mid-recipe, but she just tilted her head, like she could see through the excuse. Inside, her house smelled faintly of rain and coffee. The air was warm, but something about her made it feel colder against my skin. She moved slowly, gracefully, each step unhurried, like time listened to her. When she handed me the small glass jar, our fingers brushed. It was barely a second, but it hit like a current, quiet, deep, uninvited. "Thanks," I said, trying not to look at her lips when she smiled. "You live across the hall, right?" she asked, leaning against the counter. I nodded again, noticing how her sleeve slipped higher, revealing a thin bracelet that caught the light. There was silence, not awkward but charged, like something fragile had begun between us without permission. Her gaze lingered too long. Mine refused to leave. She broke it first. "You cook?" "Trying to," I said. "Mostly just finding excuses to talk." Her smile faded into something quieter, understanding, maybe. She looked down, brushing her fingers along the rim of her mug, and for a second, the confidence cracked. There it was, the small, vulnerable truth behind the calm. "You're too young to need excuses," she said finally. "I don't think age decides that," I answered before I could stop myself. That made her look up again, slower this time. The air between us changed. She didn't move, didn't smile. Just watched. The sound of rain outside filled the silence. It softened everything, the light, the space, even the distance between us. She walked to the window, and I followed without meaning to. "You always this curious?" she asked, not turning around. "Only when someone feels like a secret." That made her pause. I saw her shoulders lift slightly, then lower with a small, quiet breath. When she finally turned, her eyes were softer, not playful now, but something deeper, something she wasn't planning to show. "Secrets don't stay quiet for long," she said. I stepped closer, drawn by something I couldn't explain, the warmth of her skin, the scent of her perfume, the weight of everything we weren't saying. She didn't step back. For a heartbeat, the world stilled. Just her, inches away, her eyes searching mine like she was deciding something impossible. Then, a sharp knock on her door. She froze. So did I. Another knock. Louder. Her eyes flicked toward the door, then back to me. The soft certainty in them was gone, replaced by something else entirely. Fear. Or maybe regret. "Don't," she whispered. Before I could ask what she meant, she stepped away, the space between us suddenly too wide, too cold. The knocking came again, impatient, heavy. She looked at me once more, as if memorizing the moment, then reached for the handle. The door started to open, and everything inside me braced for whoever, or whatever, was on the other side. Lincoln description. The door had opened to a man holding an umbrella, mid-30s, confident, familiar. The kind of man who belonged there. Her expression softened when she saw him, but only on the surface. The rest of her face stayed unreadable. He smiled, said something about the rain, handed her a folder, and left within a minute. She closed the door quietly, but didn't turn around right away. When she finally faced me, the air was different, heavier somehow, as if the interruption had reminded her of something she was trying to forget. "Sorry about that," she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Boyfriend?" The words slipped out before I could stop it. Her eyes met mine, sharp, steady, but not angry. "Ex-husband. He still drops by for work things." There was no bitterness in her tone, just a quiet fatigue. like someone who had spent years pretending something was fine until it wasn't. I didn't mean to pry, I said. She smiled faintly. You didn't. You just ask what most people don't. Something about that made my chest tighten. She walked to the counter, poured water into a glass, and handed it to me. Her fingers brushed mine again, deliberate this time. Or maybe my imagination wanted it to be. I could hear the rain hitting the windows harder now. The storm outside felt like an echo of what was happening in the room, something that should have passed but kept circling back. You live alone? I asked quietly. She hesitated before answering. Mostly. My son's away at university. The house feels too quiet sometimes. Her voice softened on that last word, quiet. It wasn't loneliness she hated, I realized. It was the echo of being left behind. I nodded, pretending to sip the water just to keep from saying something reckless. But she must have sensed it, the unspoken pull. You should probably get back before it gets worse out, she said, glancing toward the door. Maybe, I said. But neither of us moved. She turned back toward the counter, picking up the sugar jar I'd borrowed earlier. You forgot this. When I reached for it, her hand lingered on top of mine, not accidentally this time. The touch stayed there, light, uncertain, but long enough to change something in the air between us. Her eyes met mine, not playful now, not teasing. Just searching. You remind me of someone, she said softly. Someone good? Her lips curved slightly. Someone I used to believe in. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of everything we couldn't say. The rain, the soft sound of her breathing, the closeness either of us dared to break. When I finally turned toward the door, she spoke again. You know, she said, voice lower now, most people don't come back for sugar twice. I looked back over my shoulder. Maybe I just didn't get enough the first time. Her smile faded, replaced by something fragile and real. She stepped closer, until the space between us was just air and heartbeat. Her hand brushed my arm as she passed, her perfume tracing the silence she left behind. Neither of us said goodbye. But when I reached my apartment door, I realized my hands were trembling, not from the cold, but from everything we hadn't yet allowed to happen. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. I was walking home late, the streetlights humming softly in the evening fog, when I noticed her porch light flickering. She stood outside, trying to fix it with a broom handle, her hair falling loose from its usual neatness. Need help? I asked. She startled a little, then smiled. That same guarded, half-apologetic smile she always gave when she didn't expect to see me. You again, she said softly. You must live on this street. Or maybe I just keep finding reasons to pass yours. The words came out before I could pull them back. She didn't respond, just looked at me for a long, quiet moment, then handed me the broom. Since you're already here. As I reached up to fix the bulb, I could feel her standing close, closer than necessary. Her perfume, faint but warm, filled the air between us. When I stepped down, our faces were almost level. For a second, either of us moved. Her eyes flicked to my mouth, then away. Thank you, she murmured. You're good with small things. I didn't know what she meant until she added, barely audible. And that's dangerous. Something inside me tightened, the air, the silence, her nearness. Every sound outside felt far away. Then, a phone rang. She stepped back quickly, breath catching, fumbling for her bag. The sudden distance felt colder than the night air. It's my sister, she said, answering the call. Her tone changed instantly, calm, composed, like nothing had just happened. I turned away, pretending to check the light again, though it was already fixed. My reflection glimmered faintly in her window, her silhouette behind me, her hand pressed against the glass as she spoke softly into the phone. When she hung up, she didn't move right away. You should go, she said, but her voice wavered. I don't want to. Her gaze met mine again, raw this time, unguarded. You shouldn't say things like that. Then maybe you shouldn't look at me like that. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. She took one step closer, then another, until her hand brushed against my chest, just a light touch, but enough to stop my breathing. I could see the tremor in her fingers. "This isn't right," she whispered. "People talk." "Let them," I said, barely above a whisper. Her eyes softened, but the hesitation stayed. "You don't understand yet," she murmured. "When you're my age, you stop being the story. You become the lesson." I shook my head. "Then maybe I want to learn." Her breath itched, the faintest smile tugging at her lips, a mix of disbelief and something dangerously close to surrender. Then footsteps, from the next yard over. Laughter, a gate creaking open. She stepped back instantly, pulling her hand away like it burned. "Go," she whispered again, this time like a plea. But neither of us moved. We stood there, the porch light steady above us now, both knowing we were already too far in to turn back, and still pretending we could doubt it had been 3 days since the porch, 3 long, restless nights replaying her voice in my head. I told myself it would fade. It didn't. When I finally saw her again, it wasn't outside. It was inside, her kitchen light glowing through the window, the sound of soft music spilling into the hall. She'd left the door open. Maybe by accident. Maybe not. I knocked once. No answer. Then her voice, calm but tired. "It's open." She was standing by the counter, hair tied loosely, wearing a pale sweater that slipped off one shoulder. There was a glass of wine on the counter, half full. Her eyes found mine, then lowered quickly. "You shouldn't keep showing up like this." "I wasn't planning to," I said quietly. "But you left the door open. That doesn't mean come in." "Then tell me to go." She didn't. The silence stretched between us again, the same pull, the same quiet gravity. I stepped closer, and she didn't move away this time. "You've been avoiding me," I said. Her lips parted, then closed again. "I thought it would help." "Did it?" She shook her head slightly, her fingers tightening around the edge of the counter. "No." I could hear her breathing now, shallow, uneven. The music behind us was slow, low, the kind that fills a room but doesn't distract from the heartbeat inside it. She looked up at me suddenly, her voice almost breaking. "This shouldn't be happening." "You're too young to what?" I interrupted. "Want you." She turned away, brushing her hair back with trembling fingers. I stepped behind her, close enough to feel the warmth coming off her skin. "You can tell me to stop," I said softly. "I've tried," she whispered. "You never listen." My hand moved before I thought, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face, letting my fingers linger for a second too long. Her eyes closed. "Don't," she breathed, but there was no strength behind it. "I can't keep pretending this isn't real," I said. "You feel it too." Her hands pressed flat against the counter, as if steadying herself. "You don't understand what this could cost me." "Then why are you shaking?" That stopped her. She turned suddenly, quickly, our faces only inches apart. I could see every flicker of emotion in her eyes, anger, fear, want. "Because you don't stop," she said. "Because you look at me like you already know how this ends." I didn't answer. I couldn't. The air between us was thin now, like the world had shrunk down to a single breath. I leaned forward slightly, not touching her, but close enough that the scent of her perfume was the only thing left I could think about. Her lips parted just enough to speak, or maybe to let me in. Then, from outside, the sharp sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Headlights swept across the window, lighting us both in an instant. She froze. "Go," she whispered, panic flickering across her face. "Please." But I didn't move. Neither did she. We just stood there, caught between a choice neither of us wanted to make, our shadows trembling together in the sudden light, right before everything was about to change. The headlights faded, but the silence that followed was louder than before. She stood perfectly still, eyes fixed on the window as if afraid to breathe. I could see the rise and fall of her chest, the pulse at her throat. Then she spoke, barely. "That was my husband." The words landed like a slow echo, spreading through the room. I hadn't seen a ring before, she never mentioned him. She turned away, her hands gripping the edge of the counter. He's not supposed to be home yet. My mouth went dry. You're married. It's complicated, she said quietly, her voice trembling just enough to betray her calm. He travels. He doesn't really see me anymore. I stepped closer. And you didn't want me to know. She finally looked at me, her eyes glassy under the kitchen light. Would you have stayed if I told you? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She moved past me suddenly, brushing against my shoulder as she reached to turn off the light. The room sank into dimness, only the streetlight outside spilling soft orange onto her face. You should go, she whispered, but her body didn't move away this time. I can't, I said. Not now. She closed her eyes, shaking her head. You don't understand what this means. Then explain it. Her breath caught. He knows something. He's been asking questions. About who I talk to, where I go. She turned toward me again, her voice cracking. If he finds out, then tell him, I said, sharper than I meant. Her eyes widened. You think it's that simple? I swallowed hard. No. But hiding it isn't either. The space between us was small again, too small. I could feel the heat of her, the way she trembled when my hand brushed her arm. She didn't pull away, only whispered. You shouldn't care this much. But I do. For a second, her defenses faltered. She stared at me, really stared, like she was seeing something she didn't want to admit was real. Then she spoke, softer than before. He's not the reason I've been distant. Then what is? Her lips parted. Because if this keeps going, I won't be able to stop. Her words hung in the air like a promise and a warning all at once. Before I could respond, the faint buzz of her phone cut through the silence, vibrating across the counter. The screen lit up with a name, Daniel. She froze. The phone kept buzzing. When it stopped, she exhaled shakily and turned back toward me, her voice breaking into a whisper. He's outside. I looked toward the window, headlights again, this time closer. Leave through the back, she said, almost pleading. But I didn't move. And if I don't? Her eyes glistened under the streetlight as she whispered the words that shattered whatever distance we had left. Then it's already too late. The sound of rain hit the windows like a heartbeat, steady, unstoppable. She stood near the door, soaked in the amber light spilling from the kitchen, her breath uneven. Outside, Daniel's car was gone. But the silence he left behind was louder than his presence. I closed the door slowly, locking it. For a moment, neither of us moved. Her arms were folded tight against her chest, but her eyes, they wouldn't let go of mine. You shouldn't have stayed, she said softly. I couldn't leave. The words came out raw, unplanned, too real. I took a slow step closer. She didn't retreat this time. The space between us hummed, filled with everything we hadn't said. Her voice faltered. You don't know what you're doing. Maybe not, I whispered. But you do. And you're still here. Something flickered in her, defiance, fear, want, all tangled together. She exhaled through her nose, as if trying to release it all, but it stayed. It lived between us. I reached up, my hand hovering near her face but not touching. The air felt thick, almost alive. She leaned forward before she caught herself, then froze, eyes wide, like she'd betrayed her own restraint. I can't, she murmured. If we cross that line, it changes everything. It already has. The rain grew heavier. The house felt smaller, the air heavier, every second louder than the last. She turned her head slightly, avoiding my eyes, but when she spoke again, her voice was low, trembling. You're young. You'll regret this one day. Then let me, I said, almost pleading. Let me regret it with you. That broke her composure. Her lips parted, and the breath she drew trembled. Her hand lifted, resting lightly on my chest, a pause, a pulse, a question. We stood there, inches apart. I could feel her breath brush my skin. The scent of rain and faint perfume filled the air, something warm, something human. "I'm not who you think I am," she said. "Then tell me who you are." Her eyes searched mine, desperate, exposed, alive. "Someone who hasn't felt this in a long time." The confession hung there, fragile and real. I stepped closer, close enough to feel the warmth of her against me. Her fingers tightened slightly on my shirt, as if she might push me away, but didn't. "I should tell you to leave," she whispered. "But you won't," I said. Her breath caught. "No, I won't." For a heartbeat, time stood still. No thunder, no words, just a pull, raw, terrifying, inevitable. Her forehead rested lightly against mine, our eyes closing at the same time, the silence trembling between us. It wasn't surrender, not exactly. It was understanding, of everything unspoken, everything forbidden, everything true. When she finally stepped back, her voice was quiet but certain. "Now you understand." And for the first time, I did. The morning after the storm was quieter than it should have been. The light coming through her window was soft, pale gold, the kind that makes everything look gentler than it really is. She was sitting by the counter, a cup of coffee in her hands, her hair still slightly messy from sleep. I stood there for a while before saying anything. It wasn't awkward anymore, just still. Real. The kind of silence that comes after everything that needed to be said had already been said without words. She finally looked up at me, and for a second, I almost forgot how to breathe. "You stay," she said quietly. "I didn't plan to," I answered. She smiled, small, careful, like she was afraid it might break. "That's what makes it worse." I walked closer, slowly, like I might scare the moment away if I moved too fast. The air smelled like coffee and rain and her perfume faintly lingering in the room. "You still think this is a mistake?" I asked. She stared at the floor for a long second, tracing the rim of her cup with her thumb. "I used to," she whispered. "Now. I just think it's complicated." I reached out and gently took the cup from her hand, setting it down beside her. Our fingers brushed, once, twice, then stayed. "It doesn't have to be perfect," I said. "Just real." Her eyes softened, and she exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding her breath for years. Then she leaned into me, no hesitation this time. Her head rested against my chest, her arms slipping around my waist. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. It was quiet and human, two people choosing to stay where everything felt like it shouldn't work, but somehow did. Her voice came out muffled against my shirt. "You'll leave one day," she said. "And when you do, I don't want to hate you for staying." I held her tighter. "Then don't. Just remember this." She looked up at me then, eyes warm, calm, not afraid anymore. I brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. She didn't look away. For a moment neither of us spoke. The clock ticked, the world moved, and we didn't. Then she smiled again, not careful this time. "Just soft, real. You really did just come for sugar," she said. I laughed quietly. "And left wanting everything else." We stood there, letting the quiet hold us. My hand slid down to hers, our fingers interlocking naturally, like they'd done it 1,000 times before. There was no rush, no need to explain. Just the truth of two people finding something they didn't expect, and deciding to keep it. The rain outside had stopped, but its memory lingered, just like us. And in that stillness she whispered, almost to herself, "Maybe this is enough." I smiled. "It is." "Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?"